Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. I'm looking forward to talking with Reasen, co-founder and CEO of Springbuk. Rod, I'm looking forward to talking with you for many reasons, but one, I love talking to people whose mission is to prevent disease by democratizing health data, and you're obsessed with improving America's health. So let's start there. We'll get into a little bit about what the company does. You're a health intelligence software empowering everyone in your health ecosystem to just glean actionable insights into improving population's well-being while reducing excess spending. So there's a lot to unpack there, but I want to kind of kick off with obsessed with improving Americans' health. I would say, and I'm making this statistic up, but I would say that the average person in the world gained 8 to 15 pounds over COVID. And so I think there's so many people who are trying to get into the mindset, back to discipline, me included, of, shedding that and getting a little bit healthier because we were making baked goods every night for how many, for X amount of months. So talk about how are you executing on your mission and your obsession?
All right. Well, John, thank you for what you do. And for your listeners, I'm a voracious reader, listener to many, many podcasts. And I think it's really interesting just to hear personal stories and to glean wisdom from others. So I thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
And boy, hasn't it been a crazy couple of years. Look, I'm sitting in my attic above my garage and, doing this now because the future of work has changed. COVID has changed that and really progressed how we as employers and really as human beings think about the accessibility of work from home and being able to do a video call like this today. So, it has been really, really interesting. So, maybe I'll just chime in real quick on the whole health side of this. What we do, we collect big data around medical claims data, pharmacy data, and other data sets with this idea that employers in the US have a desire that is uniquely aligned to you and I as human beings, in that when I'm healthy, my employer is rewarded because I'm at work, I'm more productive, and I cost less. And when I'm sick, they're penalized. No one else in the healthcare ecosystem is as uniquely aligned as you and I as human beings. The healthcare system, in fact, is perversely aligned in that when I'm sick, they get rewarded. So we said, let's figure out a way that we can use the data and information in a way that can help you and I as human beings and the employer not just become aligned, because we are, but actually use the data in a much more meaningful way. And that's what we do at Springbuk.
Yeah. And so when you get that data, how do you advise companies to empower their people to make life changes, right? Because there's kind of that line of, what responsibility does a corporation have, or can they tell people how to live a healthier life? I think they do have a responsibility today, because I think more so today than ever before, you have to promote self-care. You have to educate people, because the hybrid world with less structure is harder to be disciplined, I think.
Well, there's really two angles. Altruistically, employers should care about that asset called the employee, because when that asset is producing at its highest productivity, it is the best asset that it can be. So logically, employers are aligned just from our health side. Again, back to that initial statement, and that's been that way for some time. But on the financial side of this, that whole penalty and reward, employers are penalized. And so what we do as employers, I'm an employer too, but what we do as employers is we buy insurance, or we will do self-funding. And we work with self-funded employers across the US, from the Fortune 100 all the way down to the middle market. And that employer during this time of year is looking at how do they create their benefit plan. And you and I, as human beings, we're going to go through an open enrollment period. And when we go through that open enrollment period, all of that decision has already been made by the employer about what they want to do for you.
Yeah.
And so we help that employer make the best decisions. So at that first moment in time, when the plan is being introduced to you and you're picking your deductible and your copay and all that, those big decisions are already made by the employer. That next step, then, what happens, and most people never even see this, but when you are choosing to go to the doctor, which we all will likely in a given year for either a preventative measure or something more emergency related, we're the very first thing we're going to do is look on the back of our insurance card and we're going to say, where do I go? Well, that decision was made back several months ago when the employer chose their plan design. We help in
Yeah.
that very early stage so that when that human being is directed to care, it's in the most efficient, cost-effective, best value,
Yeah.
and so that alignment is at the correct spot.
Yeah. So I love this story and how you kind of backed into where you are the most beneficial for a client. So let's keep on reverse engineering that if we can, because when do clients need you, right? At what stage? I think sometimes companies, put things off and then they're like, oh, and then there's a rush process. So in an ideal world, when do people start to bring somebody like you in to advise them?
Um, there, there really is no ideal. The best idea, the best time to make a decision is now. So, certainly there is a lot of plan design decisions that are made in the August through late October timeframe when the employers are making decisions about how they structure the financial arrangement around insurance, and then those digital therapeutics that they're engaging with, and then we go through this open enrollment that happens January 1, restart that clock. But one thing that's unique about what we do, or the industry that we serve, is that the populations are very dynamic. And you think about this in a very logical way. Not only is there turnover that happens in any given year, but the lives of the humanity that you're covering in your population changes every second. People get sick, people leave, the human being changes. And so if your software is just stagnant making a decision one time, it's only a value that one moment. But because the population changes, it's an ongoing revelation that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And that's really the sophistication of the algorithms that we've built, is that there's new insights and intelligence literally at any given moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So everything so you're able to do what you do in real time and advise.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So wait, let's talk a little bit, because you're talking and you're using words like humanity and human being and well-being and, all very kind of Zen spiritual words. And then, and then we flip to algorithms and, the science, right? The art and science. And so as an entrepreneur, I want to talk kind of to the entrepreneur of you, because, we all have kind of the left and right brain side of our brains, and we all look at things in some way, in an art and then in a science. And so take me back, let's just keep on rewinding a little bit, 20, 30 plus years to, a mentor in your life that planted a seed that kind of ignited of what you're doing today, that allows you to kind of take that art and science and put it together in the business that you have today. But I want to know when the seed was planted.
When was the seed planted? I like the way you asked that question, blending the left and right and who was the mentor. My dad.
Well, I say it also because to mentor, because you talk with both sides of your brain. And so you need a special mentor, to someone who can acknowledge, who understands that, to guide you in the right direction, I think would be my 2 cents.
That's interesting. I'd say both my parents were very influential in where I'm at today. My mom was more on the sales side, would go out and she would knock on doors in rough communities, and she was a district salesperson for Avon. So she would actually get the people to go sell Avon, but she was finding these single mothers who didn't have a job or couldn't have a job because they had kids at home. And she helped them pull themselves up out of these really, really just rough conditions.
Wow.
And gave them an opportunity by being engaged with, some form of sales. And this particular product was Avon.
And this was this was when? How many years?
Oh gosh. She did this, it would have been in the late Early 90s
Okay.
through the early 2000s.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's, there's so many, as a business coach, I work with salespeople, managers, CE level execs, executives, but there's so many salespeople that say, it's so hard. Cold calling so hard. No, well, what your mom did is hard. Door to door to door to door. And that is right. With no, like geo maps, with no, not, I mean, that's
Paper maps.
kudos to your
Yeah.
mom. Right. I said to somebody the other day, I was talking about when I'm 49, when I used to go on trips, I would go to AAA and get a triptych and traveler's checks. And they were like, I don't
What is
understand
that?
they said, I don't even understand. This person was like 26. They said, I don't even understand what you're talking about. I was like, well, they would take a map out, they would highlight it, and then I would give them like whatever, like let's say $1,000, and they give me $1,000 in traveler's checks in case I lost my money. And they were like, I can't, they couldn't even comprehend it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, time's
Yeah.
anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your mom sounds amazing. All right, tell me about your dad.
Yeah. So the last thing on my mom, just on the paper maps thing, I
Yeah.
remember she would have a paper map and she would take a highlighter and highlight the roads that she had gone down. And then the next day she's going to go down this road. So that's very old school. And it's been a long time, but
Yeah.
my,
Well,
my
what's one lesson you learned from your mom watching all that? Because that's fascinating. Yeah.
oh, just to be tenacious.
Yeah.
My mother was tenacious, and she was not. She grew up in a blue collar family. She had my mom just passed away a few weeks ago,
Oh, I'm sorry to
almost
hear
over a
that.
month ago, COVID related.
Oh,
So I
I'm
have all these
sorry.
reflections that are going
Yeah.
through my mind, but very, very tenacious. And yeah, switching over to my dad. My dad was a factory worker, 32 years at Thompson Consumer Electronics, or RCA, and used to, back in the day, lift the picture tubes, when they were those big glass picture tubes, off of the conveyor belt onto the next conveyor belt, and then eventually worked his way up into machine repair. But on the side, he would always be doing something with cars,
Yeah.
flipping cars. You buy a car for $50. I'm not even kidding. Or somebody would say, "Hey, Rod, do you want this car?" My dad's name's Rod.
Yeah.
And he would get a car for free, bring it home, clean it up, and then sell it for $500. And
Wow.
that just, so that's, in its simplest form, that's business. Being able
Yeah.
to recognize an opportunity and then convert that into value. So you blend those two together. And I think that's, I am a product of my parents.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. I always admire people who can do stuff like that, like take a car, flip it. I mean, my mechanical reasoning of things like that, like I can barely read instructions. It's like I can't put things together. So I always am in awe of when people can. So your parents, I mean, they really planted some seeds of empowering tenacity, business. How does that show up today in your world?
Um, you
Because
know,
it's just such a different world that we're even living in today. So how do you bring that into your business as a founder, as a CEO, as a leader?
I don't think you can be an entrepreneur and start something from scratch if you don't have a lot of tenacity.
Yeah,
Perseverance might be another word. Tenacity is maybe just one direction. Perseverance is being able to break through walls and understand, when you need to stop and redirect or pivot. And I learned both of those from parents, not just in what they did in their professional lives, but my parents my mom particularly grew up in a very rough family, and to watch her separate herself and get dogged all her life about the decisions that she made, knowing that they were the right ones for her kids, my brother and I, meant a lot. I mean, that's part of
yeah,
who I am, is just being perseverant, knowing, sticking to your core values. And when you're right on a core value, the direction is already set for you.
yeah, yeah. That's yeah, being able to hear your voice and make tough decisions like that can be really hard. I think a lot of times people are moved through life directed by other people's voices, opinions, and decisions, but to really raise your frequency and vibration to get to where your mom got to It's easy to hear, it's easy to read in a book and see in a movie, really difficult in the execution to get to a place of um, action and peace with it. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Well, so let's talk a little bit more about your business. So you start this business. Tell me a little bit about, tell the Think community a little bit about, one of the biggest lessons you learned from starting this business.
I wish there was only one.
Yeah.
That would have meant I did everything else right. But
Well, we're just
um,
highlighting one that kind of resonates to the surface right now.
I think on the other side of perseverance and tenacity would be patience.
Hmm.
Sometimes, at least for me, one of the things that I'm learning is I know how to break down walls. That's what I've been doing my whole career. I mean, I'll bust through a wall, end up with a bloody nose and face and hands, and from doing that. And sometimes just being patient, you don't have to break down that wall. Sometimes you do,
Yeah.
but understanding which walls you need to break down and which ones you're just going to get bloody doing that aren't necessarily worth it. And that takes wisdom. That takes surrounding yourself with good counselors and the multitude of counselors, which I've been
Yeah.
a big fan of, and which is why I'm a big reader too.
Yeah. What's your favorite book?
When you ask that first question about who was the mentor, I
Yeah.
think obviously my parents. I watched their lives, but one of my favorite business books is Freakonomics.
Mm.
One of my other favorites is Michael Gerber's E-Myth, the Entrepreneurial Myth.
E-Myth is a must read for all business people. It's such a great book.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
must. I
What
read
are
that
some,
one right out of college.
yeah.
Um,
What are some of your other favorites?
those are the two that I point to as more first principles or foundational.
Yeah.
Another one that I use more as analogies is a book called S Curve. The book S Curve is more of a book for HR directors to talk about how employees move through these S curves in life. And I think it's a good one. I talk about it all the time. Anybody that knows me knows I mention this book all the time because I think businesses do the same thing. They
Yeah.
go through these. We grow as human beings when we're being stressed, when we're going up that hill. When we're going downhill, we coast, and we don't learn as much when things are easy. The best
Yeah.
times in our life are when we go through those struggles. And businesses do the same thing. They go through these S curves, and some of them get to that top of that plateau, and then they just start to wane.
Yeah.
Finding, our jobs as CEOs and entrepreneurs is to find that next S curve, so you can continue to escalate the value, and not just the enterprise value, but your opportunity in the market.
Yeah. Is that Jumping the S Curve by Paul Nunes?
No,
Oh.
it's I don't remember who the author is.
What's the name of the book?
I think it's just called S curve.
Oh.
You're Googling it to see if you can find it real quick.
I'm Googling.
You're faster than I am.
I'm only seeing one. Well, maybe you can find it and text it and email me, and then I can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, last couple questions for you. So the world today, there's a lot of people, as we sit here, end of 2021, we're in this time of the Great Resignation, right? Where people are getting, I think, because of COVID, more in alignment with their values, and they want to make sure that their values are in alignment with the company values that they're aligned with. And so for those people who are, like your dad, working at one job and have a side hustle, who want to make the side hustle a full-time thing or just jump to do a side hustle, for those who want to do something but know they have to ramp up the tenacity like your mom taught you, what advice do you give that person today?
What I tell folks, I have two college age girls who will likely listen to this. So what I tell them is find the area that you're intellectually stimulated. I believe God makes everybody with various talents.
Yep.
The Bible actually talks about it, and some made with wood, some made for steel. So we're given talents. We're bent in a certain direction. And when we find those areas that are intellectually stimulating, we feel rewarded when we go and do and accomplish. I mean, I get goosebumps when I talk about it. You've seen it when you do this, when you
Sure.
coach someone
Yeah.
and you watch how you're able to affect that person, whatever you do. Basketball players play basketball. When
Yeah.
we find that area of intellectually stimulation, then we feel reward. So
Yeah.
what we try to do is marry the problems in our business with the passion in an individual and allow those two to come together for ignition of innovation.
Yeah.
So it's part on the employee to be ambitious on their own, to find the areas of opportunity inside of an organization to ignite that new opportunity for them. But this whole jumping around every 2 years, I mean, I'll just say emphatically, I think that there's a group or segment of folks that think that they can just jump around every couple of years and get a pay raise. And long term, for all the gray hair or no hair folks that know, it's career suicide ultimately, because you don't learn. And learning that S curve when you're being stretched is the biggest opportunity for you to grow and continue to specialize. So it's a personal frustration that I've had just watching this great resignation, and it's an advice that I've been giving is just stick to it. So what if you can get a huge pay raise somewhere else? You've got to restart that clock, and man, you're just on the edge. That 2-year mark is where you really start to gain traction.
Right. I agree with you, and I always find, when I coach managers, I always talk about finding a driver of the people. Each person has an individual driver. And in business, it takes 2 years before you even get it. And it's about the mentorship, and it's about so many things. But if you're talking to people and you're talking to their drivers and you're mentoring people and you're giving them value, I agree with you, because that's when you really start learning the nuts and the bolts. You're outside of the nuts and the bolts, and you can really get into the intuitive element of what business is all about. I agree with you, and people, I think sometimes, what I was trying to say is, and no one's driver is ever money. So when people chase money over mentorship and education and growth of the nuances, it's a really big mistake. I was talking to a couple people this week where the advice I gave them was, you got to breathe and take a moment before you make a decision like you're talking about, because don't forget about the mentors. Yeah, I love that you brought that up. Rod, this has been a pleasure. Tell everybody who your ideal clients are and how they can connect with you.
So our ideal customer is a self-funded employer in the United States who wants to invest in the biggest asset that they have, which is their people, and not just save money, which is what we help them do, but to create value in the investment that they make in that asset, the people.
Yeah. Rod, this has been a pleasure. How can they connect with you? Phone number, website, LinkedIn?
LinkedIn. All my contact information is on LinkedIn. I get spammed all the time, but I do that on purpose. I love to connect. And thanks for doing this, John.
Yeah. Think community. I just want to highlight a couple of things for you on what Rod said in 3 simple terms. Invest in your people. Hard work gets you really, really far, and tenacity gets you even further. So I appreciate your advice and your parents' advice. This was great. It was a lot of fun talking to you, and let's stay in touch. I'd love to have you on in like 6 or 7 months and kind of get an update, kind of where we are middle of 2022 with just you, your business, and where you think kind of the world is, where it is and where it's heading. But I appreciate
and maybe we won't hear COVID come up, right? Maybe next year the word COVID will be gone.
Yeah, that would be really nice. That would be nice. All right, Rod, I appreciate you being on the show. Think community, thanks so much. If Rod can help you, please give him a buzz. And Rod, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.